Today, we have a very special episode for you. If you're looking to manifest more and you want to learn the science and art of attracting everything you want in your life and accomplishing your biggest dreams through manifestation, this is for you. 4 of the biggest guests on manifestation that we had this past year, we're bringing a key insight with research and science backed on how you can really apply the law of attraction and how to manifest more today. Our first guest is the one and only Dr. Joe Dispenza, who breaks down the quantum physics of creation. He's going to show you how to rewire your brain's neural pathways to manifest abundance by generating the emotions of your future before the experience. What he shares in this section is mind-blowing. Next, we have Dr. Swart, who has been taking over on our channel. She reveals groundbreaking research on the neuroscience of love. Specifically, she goes deep on the neuroscience behind why waiting to have sex can lead to stronger romantic bonds and more sustainable relationships, something that I think a lot of people can learn how to do these days. Our next clip comes from Ghiyam, who recently came on our channel and has exploded this year. He shares how to unlock your true manifestation potential by expanding your body to hold more abundance and develop certainty beyond logic during challenging situations. He's going to share a lot of the ancient spiritual wisdom that you can apply today in your life. Finally, we have the brilliant Dr. James Doty, who explains how fear and attachment block manifestation in your life. He'll be covering the critical difference between achieving external success and finding true internal fulfillment, and why fear and attachment are the greatest sources of suffering and how to overcome them. If you're enjoying this at any moment, make sure to leave a comment of the biggest takeaway you found from each one of these moments that we have on this manifestation masterclass. And also, if you're looking to create more financial abundance in your life this year and beyond, and you want to create financial peace, then make sure to check out my new book, Make Money Easy. It's all about creating financial freedom and how to live a richer life today. So if you have a relationship with money that's blocking you from creating abundance, this is the book and the keys inside of it that will help you unlock the financial freedom journey for you. Make sure to go to makemoneyeasybook.com or click the link below to get registered for our Money Mindset Masterclass as well when you pre-order a copy of this book. Again, check out the link below. And if you want more powerful videos and interviews from some of the top experts in the world to help you unlock your dreams and accomplish everything you want, then subscribe to our channel below right now, like this video, and again, share it with one friend that you want to see succeed in 2025 and beyond. Without further ado, let's dive into this masterclass on manifestation.
Let's learn the formula of how to create, right?
Yes.
So then you'd have to feel those emotions before the experience occurred. And if you understood that you could dissociate all of your attention from this three-dimensional reality and have no attention on anything known, and understand that it's the field that creates matter, not matter that emits the field, and if you could get to that place and change your energy with a clear intention and elevated emotion, your heart starts beating in this beautiful rhythm like a drum. We've measured it so many times, and when that occurs, the next thing that happens, the heart informs the brain, it's safe to create now. So the person relaxes into the present moment, and then we see this like if you took a big sheet, and a blanket, and you went like that, the energy of the heart actually informs the brain to move into these beautiful, elegant states of alpha brainwave patterns, coherent alpha. And that's saying, what's the next dream? What is it what's the next opportunity you want to experience? That's a state of creation. So now you have a Wi-Fi signal. You got a coherent brain, that's a directive, that's a signal out, and you got this coherent heart, that's what draws it to us, right? You combine those two, and if there's a vibrational match between your energy and that potential in the quantum field, and you're feeling abundant, and whatever your brain associates with being abundant, that's your call. That's what the creative process is. This is the creative center. The brain frontal lobe actually says, what would it be like to be creative or abundant? I don't know what it'd be like to be abundant. Well, then go read a few books on people who actually became abundant and realized it wasn't a glorious process. They failed miserably. They got betrayed. They learned a lot of lessons, but they persevered. And what are the qualities of that person that you could embody? That's the key, right? Because it's not about wealth. It's who you become, right? Because people think it's about their wealth, but it's the becoming process. It's the overcoming.
That attracted that, right?
Of course. So then you got to turn the battleship around, because most people say, I can't feel grateful for my wealth because it hasn't happened yet. That's the hypnosis. Waiting for the experience to happen to feel grateful. Well, that's Newtonian, that's three-dimensional reality, that's cause and effect. The quantum, you got to feel it in order for you to experience it. Okay, so this heart becomes like an amplifier, and it sends that signal out, and that frequency can carry the thought of your abundance. Suffering cannot carry the thought of your abundance. Lack cannot carry the thought of your abundance. It's a different frequency, right? We feel different feelings like suffering. We think different thoughts, right? So people can say, I'm abundant, I'm abundant, I'm abundant, I'm abundant, all they want, but that thought is never making it to the body, because it's stopping at the brainstem, because the body's saying, I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I'm in lack, right? So the affirmation doesn't work, right? Okay, so let's go one step further.
Yes.
So if you practice this, and you actually understood, well, we teach this pretty well, but if you learned it just like learning how to play handball, or learning how to hit a golf ball, learning how to dance a salsa, so you just practiced the form and you got really good at it. If you were doing it properly then, what would be the outcome? The experiment of being abundant would be that you would have to feel that feeling. It's so good at doing it with your eyes closed. You got to do it with your eyes open. Now, why? Because if you're feeling the feelings of your emotions, of your future, you're no longer looking for them.
Because you're in the future now.
Your body is so objective that it's believing it's living in that reality where you are abundant. And as long as you feel that emotion, you're not separate from it any longer. You're no longer in lack. You're no longer looking for it to occur. Say, why hasn't it happened yet? If you're feeling abundant, why would you look? Right? You wouldn't. So then, our job then is to be able to maintain that modified state of mind and body. So does that mean like you should check your bank account tomorrow and see if there's $500,000 in it? No. You keep tuning into that potential, and then here come the synchronicities.
Yes.
What's that? That's feedback in your environment. It's the universe saying, hey, Lewis, whatever you're doing, all of a sudden, we are starting to create, right? And I think it's so important for people to remember that they're the creators of their lives instead of the victim of their lives, right? So the victim is saying, I'm feeling this way because that person or that circumstance, or I don't have any money, is causing me to feel this way. This is my relationship with money. What that really means is I'm using my lack to reaffirm my dependency, my addiction, my conditioning. That's my relationship with money, is that I put my attention on money because I don't have it. So their relationship with money is, of course, built on lack. And so when they don't have it, they feel bad. And what they're really saying is, my outer environment, my reality is actually controlling the way I feel and the way I think. So, Lewis, why are you in a good mood today? Things are going good. Why in a bad mood? Things are going bad today. So this unconscious program of victimization is saying that we're allowing our environment to influence the way we feel and the way we think. Isn't that what victimization is? And the stronger the emotion we have to our lack, the more we put our attention on the fact that we don't have it, right?
Yes.
So then the person has forgotten that they're creating reality, because what they're creating is lack. And they're creating more of it. And then they try harder, and they force harder, and they control more.
And they're more exhausted, and their body's tired.
And they're breaking down, right. So the experiment then is, let's try it another way. Let's create from the field instead of from matter. Get a coherent heart, get a coherent brain, relax in the heart, and energy moves right into the brain. We've measured this 1,000 times. And all of a sudden, the person moves into these beautiful, elegant brainwave states where they're super creative, right? So the longer you're conscious of that energy, the more you draw that future to you. So then, what does the synchronicity mean? It means whatever you're doing inside of you is producing that effect outside of you. Pay attention to what you did.
Keep doing
and do
more
it again.
Yeah.
So generate a little bit more abundance. Just do it for an experiment. Now, when the synchronicity happens, do you think you feel suffering, or do you think you feel a little excitement? You feel inspired, right? So then that synchronicity is saying, use this energy, use this feeling. It should be easier for you to feel this now and go back and do it again. Keep the experiment going. Then here comes the promotion. Here comes the email. Here comes the person you meet at the right time, right? Whoa, we have something happening here. And then that becomes the momentum, right? So then we generate abundance. That's how we do it. And the relationship...
It doesn't just happen by accident, we generate it.
We generate abundance, right? So then if you have an hour meditation where you're tuning into your abundant future, but then you're spending the other 15 hours a day in lack, don't expect anything to change. You defaulted. You're back to the old energy. And if you say it's that person or that circumstance or that bank account, I'm going to say you're back to the unconscious program of being a victim, right? So then let's go a step further. If your personality creates your personal reality, and it does, and your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, then the present personality who's listening to this podcast has created the present personal reality called their life. Nothing big there. Which means if you want to change your personal reality, you're going to have to change your personality.
Right.
Nothing changes in your life until you change, right? So then 95% of who we are is on autopilot, right? It's a programmed thoughts, hardwired thoughts, beliefs, perceptions, unconscious habits and behaviors, and really, really emotional responses that tend to be really knee-jerk and automatic, right? So if 95% of who we are is a set of unconscious programs, then the first step to change is becoming conscious of those unconscious thoughts. Now, people think when they sit down to do the work and make their change that they're doing something wrong. No, those thoughts have to come up. I'm not worthy, it's never going to work. But the person who's truly persevering towards their abundance realizes just because they have that thought doesn't mean it's true. They're curious on what's on the other side of that thought. Well, that's just a thought, right? And nerve cells that no longer fire together no longer wire together. So you keep moving past that thought, it has less and less power over you, right? Now you have power over it, or better yet, you're using your brain in the proper way instead of being a victim to your brain, right? If you complain about money, if you judge people who have it, if you rush when you're in lack, if you cheat when you don't have what you need, an abundant person doesn't do that. You got to look at that and say, I got to break these habits.
Yes.
Oh my God, if I truly want to be abundant, I can't act this way. Now here's the big one. If I truly want to be a new personality that's in a new personal reality, I can't take lack with me. I can't take unworthiness. I can't take the story that goes along with it with my parents or my grandparents or my ex or whatever. That story has to end, right? I mean, if not now, when, right?
How do people end those stories?
Well, of course. Well, how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering?
Right.
That's the game, right? That's the game called change. How many times do we have to go unconscious and default to that old personality when we catch ourselves and stop doing that and get conscious? That's the moment of change. So the problem is that most people wake up in the morning and they think, let me think of my problems, right? The brain is a record of the past, right? So they think about their problems. They don't have enough money, and those problems are usually connected to certain people at certain places with certain objects and certain things.
What didn't work out, or who screwed me over.
So the moment they wake up, the moment they remember those problems, they're thinking in the past. So now they're firing and wiring the memory. They're keeping the memory of the past alive in their mind. The problem is, every one of those memories has an emotion associated with it because we've experienced it. So when they feel the lack, when they feel the unhappiness, when they feel the anxiety, now the body's in the past. Thoughts being the language of the brain, feelings being the language of the body, how we think and how we feel creates our state of being. But the conditioning process starts because conditioning only needs a thought and a feeling, a memory or an image and an emotion, and a stimulus and a response, and you're conditioning your body to become the mind of that emotion. And now the memory's not in the brain. Now the memory's buried subconsciously in the body, and the body becomes the mind of that emotion. So the body is living in lack, and it's believing.
The body is that through the nervous system, or is that through
neurochemical
the cells, everything?
So the body's so objective that it does not know the difference between the real life experience that's creating the lack and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone called lack. The body's believing it's living the same past experience every day. Why? Because the end product of an experience is an emotion. Well, if your life is changing, but you're still feeling lack, don't expect anything that you won't even see it. You'll walk right past it. You're viewing your life through the lens of the past. Okay, so then the person realizes that all their friends are making money and they're doing stuff, and they're like, wow, I'm really feeling lack now. So then, when it no longer becomes about your abundance, and it becomes about your change, that's a valuable moment. When it's no longer about your healing, but it's about your change. I paid attention to a lot of people in the last couple of years tell their story. The people who heal in this work from cancers and all kinds of chronic health conditions and Parkinson's and strokes and paralysis and all kinds of things, rare genetic disorders. It never was about, when they've really got in the game, it was never about their healing. It was about, what do I need to change in order to heal? When the game goes like that, so then the person who's feeling lack, on some level or another, it's not just in the mind, it's in the body, right?
Let me hear you say that again. When someone's looking for abundance, it's never about the abundance, it's about the change they need to make for healing?
No, I'm using healing as an example,
yes.
But let's use abundance as an example. When you understand that you cannot get abundant, when it's no longer about the game called abundance, it's about the game called change. What do I need to change? The more I change, the more I'll be abundant.
Yes.
So then it's no longer about, how come it hasn't happened? That's the old personality, separate from the experience, still in lack, asking that question.
Which is creating your current reality.
Which is reaffirming it, because that's the lens you're perceiving it through. Okay, So
we should be focusing more on what we need to change every moment as opposed to the abundance or the healing.
Well, the word meditation means to become familiar with. Sit with yourself long enough and not turn on your cell phone, not scroll through your social media, do no TikTok, no emails, none of that stuff. Don't just sit and close your eyes and watch the thoughts that come up. That's the exact reason why you're not abundant. Watch what you want to do when you're feeling lack, to take away the lack, and there's always something you do to take it away. But sit with the lack and be curious on what's on the other side of it, right? Because the body's programmed into lack now subconsciously, right? So the emotion of lack drives our thoughts and drives our behaviors. So it makes sense then that if an emotion is a record of the past, then we're doing things habitually from the past. We're thinking in the past, right? So lower the volume to the emotion every time you notice lack comes up. And just like breaking any addiction, there's going to be cravings, right? So the body's going, hey, Lewis, it's been about 2 hours since
you're so used to doing this thing.
You've been thinking lacking thoughts about 150,000 times a day, and you're just going to stop now. The body's going to start influencing the mind and saying, it's not going to work. You're a loser. It didn't work before. It's too hard. Everybody else. That's
why it's so hard for people to lose weight or get in shape, because you might try it for a few days and then the cravings, or I'm tired and I want to go default back into the old personality.
Right, because why? Because the body, which has been conditioned, the mind, the body is the unconscious mind. So the body's got used to the familiar feeling. Even they don't even know it's lack. It's just how they feel. It's not guilt. So so let me finish. So the hardest part about all of this is making a different choice. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, get ready, it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Right.
It's going to feel unfamiliar. Your body's all of a sudden saying, hey, Lewis, why don't you start thinking those same exact thoughts, do the same things, make the same choices, demonstrate the same behaviors, have the same experiences, so you could feel that feeling of lack. Complain again to somebody, call somebody up and say how miserable your life is, right? And that's the known, right? So the body is always influencing the mind to return back to the familiar territory.
The default.
The default, okay. All right, so now the person says, okay, what thoughts do I not want? What would an abundant person think this way? The people in our work that have created, I had a guy come to our event. I love this guy. He healed himself. He tried to take his life 3 times. When he told me that when he came to our work, he didn't have $2 to rub together. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars now. And he just keeps giving it away.
Wow.
His lesson His lesson was, and that wasn't the wealth, it was who he became. So it's the overcoming process that is the becoming process. Right?
Who did he become in that journey?
Exactly. He had to get beyond all of those thoughts of his past, all the mistakes he made, all the things he did wrong, all the money he owed there, all of that. That was like, he just had to no longer be that person any longer. But he did say, how would a wealthy person live? And when he created his wealth, what do you think the first thing he did?
Started giving?
Giving it away. Why? Because an abundant person doesn't have any lack. And he knows how to create more of it. And he's in the experiment. Well, what would happen if I keep giving it away? He keeps getting more. That's a good experiment to have, because he is actually living in that abundant state. He also had tremendous healings taking place, because when you heal your heart, you heal your mind. I mean, it's just the way it is. We saw it so many times, right? So he healed his heart. He got an upgrade. He got an upgrade, right? Yeah. So then the next fundamental question is, how would an abundant person think? Write it down, dude, and fire and wire those thoughts in your brain and install the hardware. Keep doing it with attention and intention. It becomes the new voice in your head. It becomes a software program. Then say, okay, how am I going to be in my life today? What would an abundant person, how would they behave? And before you reach for your cell phone and start scrolling through your social media, close your eyes and rehearse in your mind how that person would walk, how they would breathe, how they would smile, how they would greet people, how they would be on Zoom calls, how would they be in traffic, how would they be at dinner. And the act of closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing the act, if you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between the real life experience and what you're imagining. In fact, just a little bit of time, you start to install the neurological hardware to look like you already did it. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. It's primed for the future. Keep doing it. Keep rehearsing. No different than playing an instrument. No different than learning how to dance. No different than learning how to act or play a sport. Everybody's always rehearsing, right? The rehearsal process changes the brain to look like you've already done it. You've already experienced it. Now, what's the essential part of that? The hardware is in place. Now, all you got to do is step into the footprint. Keep doing it. It becomes a software program. You start acting like an abundant person. Everything changes. Your energy changes. Your mood changes. The way you walk, the way you breathe, your posture changes. You're out of the known, right?
Yes.
You got to condition the body now emotionally into the future. Can't open your eyes in the morning until you are feeling worthy to receive. And if you can't feel worthy to receive, then if not now, when? If it takes you 2 hours to get there, ask me if it's worth 30 years of running, trying to get what you need matter to matter. Okay, so then the person who wrestles with their lack, they're out of the bleachers and they're on the playing field. Yeah. Now, here's what we learned. Let's go back to beliefs now. So remember, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again. A belief is something that you keep thinking enough times that you hardwired in your brain and it becomes an automatic program. And we have beliefs about all kinds of things, money, relationships, God, whatever it is. It's all based on what we've been told or our past experiences, right? The boundaries of those beliefs are our emotions, right? So let's just say you got betrayed or somebody abused you or your father told you that money was bad and there's never enough of it or whatever. That's a story, okay? But somehow it left an impression on you. Remember that event very clearly, and that's kind of rooted in who you are, right? Okay, so that emotion then is the boundary of our belief, okay? So how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. If you take a thought and a feeling, 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 that's called an attitude. A series of good thoughts with a series of good feelings, you say, I have a good attitude today. You have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to a series of negative feelings. You say, I have a bad attitude today. So attitudes are just shortened states of being. Good attitude in the morning, bad attitude in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, and you keep those up, and you string attitudes together, you create what's called a belief. And a belief is just an extended state of being. So if you keep thinking the same thought, you keep hardwiring it in the brain, you keep feeling the same feeling, you keep conditioning in your body, the redundancy of that cycle over and over again conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind of that belief. And all beliefs are subconscious states of being. Okay. Take a belief, and you string them together. You form what's called a perception. And perceptions are just such extended states of being that we're unconscious. And so then we edit out reality. In fact, most people don't see things the way they are. They see things the way they are, right? And people are always filling in reality unconsciously based on their memory. They could be married to a person for 40 years and they don't see the person, they see the memory of the person, right? And there's research to prove this, okay? So how do we change a belief or perception about ourselves or our lives, okay? We've studied this. Okay, let's just say that lack is ingrained in there. You got the story, you lived on the streets, you lost everything, you got betrayed, your business partner took everything, took your wife, you got the story in the half, okay? Okay, you got to start telling a new story of the future, right? You got to believe in that future more than you have to believe in the past. So how do you do that? You only believe in the past when you feel the emotions of the past. The only time you're going to believe in the future is when you feel the emotions of the future, right? Okay? So in order for us to change a belief or perception about ourselves and our lives, we have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in your brain and the emotional conditioning in your body. And your body literally has to respond to your mind. That the choice that you're making to change in that moment becomes a moment in time that you never forget. Now here's the key. Physically, the stronger the emotion you feel when you make that choice, the more you'll remember the decision. Okay, so then how do we downregulate that old belief? If the trauma created an emotional quotient of 6 or 7, then your decision to change your beliefs got to be a 9.
Right.
And you got to come out of your resting state, and that moment has to define you. You could say, I know exactly where I was, the time of day it was, who I was with, when I made my mind up to change, right? Because you created a long-term memory. Long-term memories are created from strong emotion. Right. But if the amplitude of that emotion is greater than the betrayal, boom, the body starts responding to the mind, and you're actually giving your body a taste of the future emotionally. So you brand your...
What's possible.
No, your body's actually getting the taste of that future event.
It's experiencing the future now.
Exactly. Big explosion in the quantum field. Big explosion. So the side effect of that is if you combine that clear intention with that elevated emotion, you're basically remembering your future, and it looks no different than remembering your past. Think neurologically within the circuits of that memory and feel within the emotions of that new belief and watch your life begin to change, because nothing changes in our life that we change. And when we change our energy, we change our life. So now the experiment all of a sudden is no longer based on it being hard or trying or wishing or wanting or hoping. That's what we do when we're in lack or separation. It's about change. So then when we finally realize, in order for us to become abundant, we have to overcome the old personality. And that's 95% of who we are, right?
Yes.
So then the side effect of the beginning of this process is a lot of discomfort. It is a lot of discomfort because you're stepping outside the known into the unknown, and now you can't predict.
It's scary.
No, you'd rather hold on to your lack.
The pain, the suffering.
Rather tell the story of that. At least it makes you feel something that's familiar. When you step outside and you're saying, I'm not going to complain about money any longer. I'm not going to complain about I don't have any. I'm not going to judge other people who do. I'm not going to say I can. I'm not worthy. It's never going to work. All those things got to go. I'm not going to feel lack. I'm not going to feel unworthy. I'm not going to feel separation. I'm not going to feel resentment. These are the things that are keeping my reality the same. Now it's no longer about abundance, it's about who you become. So the overcoming process becomes the becoming process. And so many people come to this work, they want abundance, they want healing, they want a new relationship, they want a new career, they want the mystical, but really they want wholeness.
What does neuroscience tell us about signs, signals, and synchronicities? Are they something we should be paying attention to based on neuroscience and brain chemistry, or is it more spiritual woo-woo?
Well, neuroscience doesn't tell us anything about that, or much, let's say, about that at the moment, but that's why I'm probably going to write another book, which I said I would never do. But I'm just so fascinated by this. So when I get back to London, I'm going to start properly doing the research on this. So far, it's been kind of something I'm interested in. And I have to say, I wasn't sure if my book publisher would be okay with it. And
About these things, science, signals, synchronicities?
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. I love that stuff.
And I think that it coming from a neuroscientist is a new angle. It's not that there aren't books out there on this kind of thing. But I really want to open up that conversation as well, because there's a lot of people suffering. And like I said, you can sound like you're crazy if you start talking about stuff like this. So I want to open up the conversation, being open, but trying to keep it as rigorous as possible to give people permission to come forward and share these stories, because I think that's only going to be good for everyone.
Wow. That's cool. So when someone sees the signs, signals, and synchronicities happening in their life, what do you think that's telling them? That they're on the right path, that they should be paying attention more, that they should be trusting their intuition more when they're seeing these three things?
So I feel like what it says, and somebody said this to me actually the last time I was in LA, but it had to land really emotionally for me to believe it, and that's what I want for everyone, is it tells you that you are being guided, and it tells you that you're safe and protected.
All right.
And one of the things I picked up from you a couple of years ago was that you said, sometimes, if I'm feeling like in an emotional crisis, I just say to myself, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. And I can't tell you how many times I've used that in the last 2 years.
Wow, that's beautiful.
But that's kind of like self-soothing the inner child,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
With this kind of interest and more esoteric things that I've had, like since I met you that time, I'd like to think that I'm not just safe because I tell myself I'm safe, but I'm safe because I believe in something greater.
Yes.
And I'm tapping into it and I'm allowing it to make me feel safe. Because however good you become psychologically at soothing yourself, you can still feel very alone. So feeling like...
Unless you have a deeper spiritual connection to something.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Wow, that's fascinating. Do you believe that we can be in beautiful, healthy, loving relationships, and we can manifest everything we have on our vision or action boards if we have yet to heal the wounds of our childhood? As a neuroscientist?
No.
Really? Wow. So if we have these visions and dreams and goals that we want to go after, and if we want to have a beautiful relationship, but we are wounded still, the inner child is wounded inside of us as adults, what will happen to us?
So this is really about inner child and shadow, right? So I think people understand that you've got an inner child that maybe didn't get over things that you experienced in your childhood. Shadow is about the parts of yourself that you've rejected because as a young child, you rely on your primary caregivers for survival.
Yes.
And if there is something that they don't love about you, you want to hide that for all the world so that they will still love you and not let you die.
You don't want anyone to know this about you.
No.
That's shame.
So you hide it away in childhood and often find yourself in adulthood no longer even aware of what those things are because you've rejected them so deeply.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's driving a lot of your unconscious behavior.
Right.
So if you put together the inner child and the shadow, then what happens is you meet people on the same level of psychological wound as you.
Oh, man.
You also leave people where if you evolve out of that and they haven't been able to.
Wow. Which I think goes back to one of the pieces of content I heard you talk about, which is like the sense of smell connecting to someone's stress levels or anxiety levels. Like you'll kind of attract a similar nervous system, or I guess a certain similar, like, I don't know, stress level?
Yeah,
is that right?
So it's not smell. It's sensing, not through smell, the level of the stress hormone, yeah.
Interesting.
But that's short term, right? But the inner child and shadow stuff is longer term.
Gosh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you think we attract people based on our psychological wounds?
100%.
Wow. And as we start to heal and grow, if the other person's not healing and growing, we kind of pull away.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's interesting.
Oh, I can see the cogs moving in your
I
brain.
just think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Speaking, I guess, about relationships and men and women, with all of your expertise on the brain, is the process of manifesting love and falling in love different from men versus women?
I think if it's love you're really looking for, then it's not different. But
Not lust.
yeah, exactly. The issue is what you're actually looking for.
So you think men and women manifest love the same way, similar ways?
Yeah, I think if you want that sense of partnership and friendship and intimacy, and you want to be loyal and you want it to be for the long term, then it doesn't matter what gender you are. But if the disconnect is often, and this is a bit of a stereotype, but usually it's more that that women want a loving, stable relationship, and men perhaps don't want that as much.
Want sex or whatever, yeah.
Or just don't want it right now, but go through periods where that's what they want and go through periods where that's not what they want, which I guess could be true of any gender as well. But overall, more likely women will want to be in a monogamous relationship. And
why is that, based on kind of the brain science?
So it comes from evolution. So when we lived in the cave, women did need men to protect them from predators and to hunt for food. So women,
I guess especially if they're pregnant too, and they weren't able to go out and hunt or gather or whatever it might be.
They generally didn't hunt as much, so they gathered more. But then it's hard to get protein from what you gather rather than what you hunt. So for survival, and they use the fat and the skins and everything. So it wasn't just food; it was shelter and fire and all of that kind of stuff. So although we don't necessarily need a man for those physical things now, it's a very strong survival wiring in the brain. And so what we have, in the cave, we lived nomadically. So often the men would go and hunt and be away for a very long time. Or if they went far enough and they found a cave of the same tribe, they would just stay there and not go back. Why risk your life to travel back for 6 weeks?
Right.
But over time, a lot of societies in the modern world have asked people to live in unit families. And so we have seen men's brains be rewired.
Really?
Yeah. So relatively recently, like maybe in the last 10 years, research has showed that when you become a dad for the first time, oxytocin rewires your brain so that you're more into bonding and less into the testosterone competitive stuff. Because if you think about it, lions and tigers, they'll eat their own children.
You have to tame that in some ways, right?
Yeah.
But how do you tame it, but also harness it in other ways? You know what I mean? It's like a dance of having drive and testosterone.
Yeah.
Like, I never want to lose that drive, right?
I get this question all the time.
But I also want to be like a great loving parent and partner and all these things.
Yeah.
And not let testosterone drive me in doing damaging things,
So from about the age of 35, your testosterone will have started dropping significantly already.
Not mine. Let's go.
One's testosterone tends to drop from that age. So when you do become a dad,
it drops after you become a dad.
For the first time, oxytocin goes up, testosterone drops. You become much more about cuddling and bonding and wanting to stay in the home and look after the mum and the baby.
Less about lifting and hunting, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
If you keep lifting, then you would actually keep your testosterone levels higher. Also, if the baby sleeps in the same room as you, then your testosterone levels drop even more.
Come on.
So you might want to move out for 3 months to a different bedroom.
Yeah. I've already told her I'm getting my sleep, the first few months. So your testosterone drops
if you sleep in the same room as the baby.
Why is that?
Because the oxytocin's becoming higher and higher, because you've got this cute little warm thing that smells so nice and is so vulnerable and dependent on you, and it's in the room with you the whole 8 hours, of just oxytocin boost.
But are women attracted to men with less testosterone?
They are when they're not fertile, but they are not when they are at peak fertility.
Really?
So mid-cycle, when you're ovulating, you're going to want a bad boy, and the rest of the time, you're going to want a nice man that will stay at home and help you look after the baby.
So if you're not a bad boy when you're at peak fertility as a woman, is that going to hurt the relationship if you don't give women what they want?
Hang on, say that again.
So if a man is not a
bad boy.
not a bad
Yeah.
boy,
Yeah.
when a woman is at peak fertility, and the man just wants to cuddle and chill and not be driven by testosterone and give the woman that testosterone feel, will that ultimately hurt the relationship long term if the woman doesn't get what she wants sexually?
I mean, I think if she's chosen him by then. So this is more about when you're like in the choosing phase. Once you've settled down with someone, then you have like a logical conversation about, are we trying for a baby or not, right?
But logic and emotion are two different things.
No, I mean,
in relationships, you know, you might logically say, okay, I'm safe, but emotionally you want something else.
This is a reason that people cheat.
Right. Right. Because they're not getting what they want sexually.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do you suppress the thing you want sexually to be like, oh, but he's such a good guy, or he's this, but if he's not giving me what I want, then I'm going to go find it from this other younger testosterone-driven man, right?
You're getting really jealous here.
I'm not getting jealous.
this fantasy younger high testosterone man.
Well, I'm just thinking, is this what women deal with?
I know.
Is this what women deal with?
Yeah, to some extent, you know, more consciously or less consciously, depending on the woman.
Yeah. It's interesting, right?
So let me kind of explain the physiology behind it from the research that we know the best.
Yes.
Which is in prairie voles. So there are two types of voles in America. Marsh or mountain voles.
Voles? What's a vole?
Vole, it's a little rat-like creature.
Prairie dogs?
No.
Not prairie
It's
dogs.
a vole. It's
Vole,
more like
okay.
a mouse or a rat.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. The ones that live in the marsh or the mountain, they have plenty of food and plenty of shelter, and they're super promiscuous. The ones that moved to the prairie, where there's like scarce food and shelter, they snuggle in and settle down and become monogamous for life.
The same rat, the same mouse, but just living in different areas.
Yeah.
Come on.
So
wait, you're telling me rats are monogamous?
these voles, these voles are monogamous. The voles are monogamous.
If they live in the prairie.
If they live in the prairie, but not if they live in the marsh.
But if they have all the food in abundance, they're just
And lots of female voles that they can go and visit.
they're just little polyamorous voles.
Yeah,
Huh? They're just,
because they know that if they get one vole pregnant and she's left on her own to look after her young, they're going to survive because they're well sheltered. There's plenty of food for her to nip out and bring it back to the babies. Yeah, but in the prairie, if he was promiscuous, then the chances of his offspring dying are quite high because she can't defend the nest herself. She can't find enough food for herself and them without help. And so let's extrapolate this. How does this help humans, right? Okay.
well, first off, which mice are happier? The ones that are more promiscuous or the ones that are coupled?
I think it depends on the vole.
So you think the female mice are happy if they just, are pregnant, but then their partner just leaves?
No.
They're not happy.
No.
How do we know? Can we test that? Okay, so how do we apply this to our
hang
lives?
on. There is an answer to that.
Okay.
We test it through levels of oxytocin and vasopressin.
Come on, have we done this? Have people done this?
Yes.
No way. From these mice?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
And actually, just to be serious, the research has done more to help with loneliness, grief, and heartbreak. But obviously, it's got implications for dating.
Wow.
So because one of the things that we saw with the receptors in the brain is that, like, if I'm in, no, it's got to be the other way around. If you're in love with me, you've got more vasopressin receptors in your nucleus accumbens, which is on the reward circuitry. And then every time you see me, you get a reward. And the longer that we've been dating and stay together and become closer, that reward becomes more intense every time you see me. However, if we then had a prolonged separation, time can downregulate the effect of those receptors. So obviously there are implications for that in a breakup or grief, right?
Right.
But one of the things I think is like so important for dating is that if a couple are getting to know each other, and this is all on like heterosexual couples, the research, then as a woman is sexually interested and liking the guy and enjoying the dating, her oxytocin levels is like slowly starting to go up. when they start actually having sex, she's going to be releasing higher levels of oxytocin every time she orgasms, and that's going to make her bond to the guy much more. If you have sex on the first date, the guy's vasopressin levels will plummet straight away, and all he'll be interested in is testosterone. If you make him wait, his vasopressin and oxytocin levels go up, and then when you do actually have sex, he's already bonded, so it's more likely to become part of a loving relationship.
Wow. So if a woman sleeps with a man on the first date or two, is a man driven to want to bond long-term with that person? No. Why not?
Because the vasopressin levels drop as soon as he has sex.
What does that mean?
So vasopressin is the one that makes the prairie voles monogamous. The higher the levels of that, and that the receptors appear in the reward circuitry of your brain. And so basically, if you see your partner in distress, it affects your brain, those neurons, and you want to comfort her through physical touch. So that's oxytocin. But if you haven't had time for those receptors to appear in the correct place to make you bond, then it's just it goes back to lust. So what I say about love and relationships is that the genetics and the receptors will load the gun, but sexual activity will pull the trigger.
So based on neuroscience, if you sleep with someone quickly, you're less likely to bond long-term together. You're more likely to be promiscuous or just not be as interested in that person long-term. Is that right? That's fascinating.
No.
But you hear a lot of people just be like, just sleep with them on the first day. It's fun. Just have fun. It's all good. But I just feel like you're setting yourself up for letdown.
But if that's what you want, that's fine. But I think
don't expect the guy to keep liking you after that.
No. And don't say it's fine and it's fun if you actually want a long-term relationship, and then be disappointed that they didn't want that too.
Yeah. So the brain chemistry within a man changes if they have sex earlier with a woman.
And it changes in a different way if they wait and they actually create a bond and then
first, and then have sex.
Yeah.
What changes within a woman when they have sex with a man? Do they become more bonded to the person?
Yeah, so for the woman, it's not so much to do with whether they are already in love with the person or not. If they're having sex and they're releasing oxytocin, because we don't have as much testosterone as you. You've got at least 7 to 8 times as much testosterone as me. And that buffers the effect of oxytocin, whereas I would get the full effect of oxytocin.
That's fascinating. So a woman, when they have sex with a man, they're bonding quicker.
Yeah.
But when a man has sex with a woman, he's not necessarily bonding right away. He has to have more time connecting with her until he bonds.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
And then then the oxytocin isn't as buffered by the testosterone. So when you've got the vasopressin and the oxytocin high, then the testosterone has less negating effect on it.
This is fascinating. Okay. What else about neuroscience and relationships should we address, since we're on this topic, that you think is really interesting?
So I think, the whole visual and smell thing at the start is quite interesting. And then the receptors and hormones to do with bonding and sex is really interesting. I would say that because we live so much longer now, we're using these cave analogies, but to be honest, in cave times, you and I would both be dead.
Die at 30, yeah.
So relationships potentially have to last for longer. And I think there's 2 things to say here. One is that you can use neuroplasticity to keep growing and changing in a way that keeps a relationship fresh, if you are holding on to this fantasy that a relationship has to last forever, even if we're now living till we're 100, right? So I think another way to look at it is about being in the present, not necessarily putting this intense pressure on yourself, your partner, and the relationship that it has to last forever.
Yeah.
Understanding that even if a relationship breaks down, and that's obviously difficult to handle at the time, that there are potential possibilities for something that's more right for you at a different age than maybe a choice you made in your 20s. So, nothing you don't have to be a neuroscientist to say those two things. It's kind of like just using your brain to understand that there's a certain amount of time. There are, benefits to being in long-lasting relationships, but there are possible alternatives
Absolutely.
as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. How does someone start to believe something is possible when they've never created it for themselves?
That's a beautiful question. How does somebody believe something is possible when they haven't created it for themselves?
It's possible for me to make $1 million, or possible for me to become financially free when I've never created it and I've always been broke.
There's two ways to do that. Number one, people think that it's very difficult to get there, and it's actually much easier. Your body and your mind and your soul are very compliant. If you say something over and over again, and it's so simple, I don't want to overcomplicate spirituality. If you say something, a mantra over and over again, even if you're faking it in the beginning, your body, your mind, and your soul will comply with that vibration. And then you will do actions that will be closer to that vibration, and they will reinforce each other. So what I do literally every day is I just ask myself, what is the highest vibration I need to get to? I see the delta of where I'm at now and where I need to get to. And I just keep hitting that point over and over and over again, incessantly, until all of me complies with it. And it happens every time.
How do you hit that point when you're feeling depressed or depleted or down?
That brings me to the second thing. Every single week, I try to find people who have already achieved what I'm trying to achieve and spend time with them, add value to them, and serve them. Because Kabbalah explains there's a universal law. If you add value to someone or serve them in a way that makes their life better, you draw from them their positive qualities, traits, and vibration. So if there's something that I want from Lewis, meaning what do I want? All I want from you is the consciousness you've already created. I want the vibration you've already achieved in your life. I want your wisdom, because wisdom and consciousness is the one thing I can take from you that doesn't take away from you, but adds to you.
It doesn't ask of me, it adds to me.
It does, because if I become one more person that learns from you, the universe then replenishes you with even more wisdom and energy. So as you grow your audience, your wisdom increases because your audience craves more through you. And so the creator bestows upon you much more wisdom and energy. And that's the value of growing your audience. And I'll tell people on social media, people are growing their audience because they think, well, that's how I monetize, or that's how I become famous. And the ego gets in. The only intention you should have for growing your audience is you now have all these mini vessels which are craving your wisdom. So what happens is it forces the creator to give you more wisdom, and you become a greater channel. And that should be our intention for growing our audience.
Yeah, how do I serve my community in a deeper way?
Correct.
It's all about service.
It's all about the customer, all about service. And when you have that mindset, everything opens up and grows.
Yeah, of course. What has been the thing that has blocked you in the last year the most? This is something you've been practicing for 20 plus years, 25 years, roughly, these spiritual laws, but what's the thing that's still hard for you to break through, or sometimes you forget and you have to be reminded with a painful lesson?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the things I've learned is it doesn't matter how long you've been spiritual or you've been working on something or what your past experience has been. Every test you go through is sent to you by the universe that is exactly on your level. The challenge, your opponent is exactly equal to where you're at in order to get you to your next level. And the only reason the next level isn't comfortable is because it's not your current level. It's a level that you're not familiar with. So of course you don't see it. Of course it's illogical. Of course it's dark. And so what I realized in this year, this has been probably one of my most transformational years, is that I am such a perfectionist. Sure, maybe you can relate.
You look perfect, man. You got perfect hair. You got perfect outfit. Everything's like put together, man. You look good.
Oh, thank you. I am such a perfectionist that everything I do, I've always felt has to be the best. And this was the year I realized that part of why I'm trying to always be the best is I don't want to let other people down. I have to kind of give off this persona because I'm representing spirituality, and I don't want to make spirituality look bad. So I have to have everything put together. I have to.
Plus, you've got a big business. You want to make sure your employees, your team, your investors, whatever it might be, customers feel like you're credible as well.
Correct.
It's just some sloppy human being walking around.
Correct. I can't be sloppy externally or internally. But what I realized was that what that was causing was a lot of guilt and shame every time I fell short of the mark I needed to be at, or the expectations I put on myself. And then what was happening was the guilt and the shame was creating much more negativity than all the things I was trying to perfect. So guilt and shame lowers your vibration more than any other mistake you make. People make mistakes like, I don't know, let's say you're in a relationship and you say something to your spouse or to your girlfriend or boyfriend that hurts them or upsets them, and you feel bad about it. That was one moment in time where you created a little negative energy. But the guilt and shame that we carry after making a mistake is 1,000,000 times the negative energy because it's constant. Every second you hold on to guilt and shame is another moment you're injecting negative energy. So the test isn't the mistake you make. It's the guilt and shame you have afterwards. So how do you remedy that? And this was my biggest lesson. It was taking the pressure off of myself of trying to appear as someone that's perfect and spiritual and allowing myself just to be myself everywhere I went. And I can't tell you, how freeing that was, but at the same time, it created so much instability in other people because everyone's like, wait a minute, this was the David we knew. And now what's this? I said, no, this is today a little bit more of the real me. And now I'm actually building a new foundation in my life that's much more authentic to who I am.
How so?
There are people whose approval I wanted so badly. And I connected with your energy and I feel like we share so many similar qualities. I know exactly what somebody needs to hear to feel comfortable.
Sure.
I know what buttons to stay away from. I know how to talk to them in a way that can just make them feel really good and comfortable. And I learned that many times I'm killing myself or sacrificing myself or I'm being inauthentic to just make them feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. So now I'm just learning to be me and still be a giver, but to be in the way that maybe makes them uncomfortable in the moment, but I'm being true to myself. And these examples have been happening more and more. It happens with my parents, happens with my friends, it happens with business partners and colleagues. I'm just learning to just show up as me versus who I think they want me to be.
It's beautiful. What do you think people are getting wrong about manifestation today?
What are people getting wrong about manifestation today? I think there's a prevailing belief system that we need to suffer to be successful. And that's incorrect. I think there's so much grind culture that's being thrown out there. And by the way, you do have to work hard and you do have to work consistently. But 99% of it is your belief system about what it takes to manifest. If you believe you must suffer to be successful, then that is the destiny you are creating. You will be successful, but you will only do it after you suffer. Elon Musk has the same hours in the day as we do. He thinks it's easy to colonize Mars. He thinks it's as easy to colonize Mars as we do, maybe preparing a cup of coffee.
Sure.
Because he thinks it's easy to colonize Mars, that consciousness creates a vessel that draws in the right engineers, that draws in the right ideas, that draws in the right lawmakers to change the laws to satisfy him. Of course, there are challenges, but he's loving even the challenges to an extent where it all seems easy. If I think something is hard or impossible, then I literally call in the entire universe to create a movie for me that makes it hard and impossible. There are people who every relationship they're in is a drama. It's difficult. It's hard. Every city I go to, I ask them, is dating hard in this city?
They all say yes.
They say, I say, which city is the hardest? They say, oh my God, I'm in New York. It's so hard to date here. I'm sure it's easier in Los Angeles. Yeah, right. People in Los Angeles say it's impossible to date here. I'm sure it's easier in New York. Everyone always says it's harder wherever they're at.
Why is that?
Because
they haven't been successful yet in their own city.
They haven't been successful in their own city. And if I say it's hard to date, then I don't have, it doesn't reflect poorly upon me the fact that I'm single. Mm-hmm. So I will tell everybody this narrative, it's hard to date, so that they don't judge me and I don't judge myself that I can't find a man or a woman.
It's not me, it's everyone else.
It's everyone else. It's the city. It's the energy here. Yeah. It's the, everyone in LA is so superficial. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, Even if everyone in LA was superficial, if you earned your soulmate, that one person would appear right at your door.
Ooh,
Think about it. There are serial killers in prison who are married.
crazy. They found their soulmate, yeah.
If someone in a maximum security prison who has a reputation of a serial killer can find their soulmate, I'm sure you can too in Los Angeles.
Yeah, with millions of men or women here. Yeah, exactly. It's funny, you just got to know where to go. You just got to try new things, and you got to change, you got to transform on the inside out.
Exactly what you just said. When your consciousness and belief systems and energy is in the right place, then you will be guided. Your legs will start moving in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Your profile on a dating app algorithmically will change. People will feel your energy. People will find your profile at the right time and feel called to match with you. All of that comes from your vibration. I talk about products on a shelf, right? So one of the things that we talk about in our company is that the energy of the founders, so Mary Ruth and I, our consciousness, down to the executives, down to the directors, to the managers, and to the associates, all of us, our energy needs to be of such a high vibration, of an unlimited mindset, in order for energy to flow from the creator through us to the product. And then people feel that product on the shelf, and they don't know why they like it. They just say it's good branding, right? But they feel something in the bottle. And then that's what they should feel when they consume it, when they take it, and then the energy shifts. And here's the thing, in your company, if you have one person who's toxic, or you have one person who has a limited mindset, they are clogging the pipes of energy flowing down to the product level. So one of the things that I do, I have very little business experience, but from the spiritual side, I'm always checking in with the employees. Where's their mindset at? I once went to my head of sales and I said, hey, in my walk this morning, so every morning I walk and I talk out loud to the universe in the form of prayer. Prayer is just a technology to expand your vessel. People think prayer is something you do to bribe God to make you more comfortable, but there's no bribing God. God is a perfect force. Prayer is a technology to transform our vessel, to increase the frequency, to allow more energy in. So every morning I'll talk out loud to the universe.
And what's the best way to pray for miracles or abundance in our life?
Any way that makes you comfortable. The way I do it is I walk and I talk out loud in the morning before everyone's awake. Some people like to be still. Some people like to do it in their head. I like to talk out loud. Something very powerful about it. In the first 5 minutes of prayer, all these negative forces will attack you to try to distract you not to do it. And you'll think it's not working. You'll want to get to your phone and you'll want to quit. I always say you got to go past the first 5 minutes and then you break through kind of a miracle zone. And then when you talk out loud to the universe, your words become a vessel for energy to come in. And so ideas, my best ideas, best product ideas have come on these walks. And I will talk out loud and these ideas will come. And I had an idea and a vision for a revenue number for my head of sales. I went to him. This guy's got 40 years experience. I said, hey, I think we can get whatever it was, 100 products into Whole Foods. This was right when we first got into Whole Foods.
100 SKUs?
100 SKUs.
Holy cow. How many SKUs do you have?
We had 100.
Oh, wow.
I said, I think we can get all 100. Today we have about 300, but I said we can get all 100 into Whole Foods. And he looked at me and he started laughing. He's like, 40 years experience. I said, we need to aim for 2 this year to get into Whole Foods. And that's how it works. And we can get to 4 next year, whatever. And I said,
that's a limiting belief though.
Based on statistics and history, which is what most people use to form their belief systems.
Most people aren't going to Mars also based on history.
Exactly. The people who are changing this world are people who are not looking at history as a way to forge their belief systems. They're looking at something bigger, more divine, which is endless. And they're drawing these belief systems from a higher place. So I said, look, you have the experience, I don't. But as a founder, in the last 8 years, we've been doing this together. As a founder, I do get ideas, and thankfully, we do control this company. So I want you to really be open to this idea. And we had this back and forth. I said, no, it's impossible. I said to him, listen, I want you just to be open to it. And he's like, okay, we'll be open to it. Something happened on a call at Whole Foods, and they said one of their brands wasn't doing well. Manufacturing started to malfunction, and a whole shelf became open. Lo and behold, that year, I think we got 75 products in.
Wow.
Never happened before in the history of Whole Foods. We shot up to be one of their number 1 brands. And I think today we're at almost 120 or 130, somewhere up there. And this all happened in 1 year. And every year I go back to the team and I say, guys, and this happens in every department. Remember what we thought could happen. Remember what we saw visually, and if we saw it and we feel it, it means it exists, and we have to be open to it. At the very minimum, I need you to be open to it.
Yeah, I love the question I like when I present this to someone is, in a world of possibilities, if this was possible, what would need to happen?
Beautiful.
In a world of possibilities, if it was possible for us to get 100 SKUs in Whole Foods, what would need to happen?
You just opened up their mind to bypass their old limited belief system. That's a great way of framing it.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Wow. So you got 75 SKUs in 1 year.
Yeah.
When you had like a couple before then or something, right?
Yep.
And you also said that, something you said earlier, you said you made $1 million at 15. Is that right?
Yeah.
But then you were kind of broke for 15 years?
So I made all this money in the stock market early on because I had a lot of desire, a lot of energy. I just didn't know where to put it. And so I started to trade and it started to do really well. But that's when my life started to get out of control as a teenager. And I became a gambler. I started to
Really?
Oh yeah. I started playing poker 8 hours a day. And
Oh man, I did that back in
you
10 years too. In college, just like poker till 4 a.m.
till 4 a.m. Sometimes I'd go into a casino on like a Sunday and come out on a Tuesday.
Oh,
and you don't even see daylight.
I was like playing like $15 hands with like college buddies. Not casino life, but yeah.
With that, I mean, it's never enough. So casino life was the next thing, right? And so I was doing that and I realized, why am I just kept feeling more and more drained, right? You got the highs and then you feel low. And once I started to learn Kabbalah, I started to realize that the highs and the lows I was drawing energy, but I didn't create the vessel to hold this energy. Mm-hmm. Gambling, drugs, alcohol, sex, all of these things draw energy. You're drawing God. You're drawing the universal force of creation. The reason why it ends up causing chaos is there's no vessel to hold this energy, so you short circuit. And what does a short circuit look like? There's a flash of light, and then there's darkness. But the flash is very bright. That flash is very addictive. So most people, they draw energy, but there's no vessel to hold it, which we can explain what that means to create a vessel. There's no vessel to hold it. They feel this flash, and then there's darkness. There's emptiness. There's addiction. Because they may not know spiritual laws, they'll go right back to more flashes to feed the addiction.
So it sounds like there's almost a 3-step process is what I'm seeing. Number 1, learn to draw the energy you want to you. Mm-hmm. Number 2, create the vessel within you so that you can hold it. And I'm assuming number 3 is where to bring that energy, how to be of service with that energy, and then just continue to draw, have a container big enough to hold it, and then pour it out into others. Is that
That's a beautiful way of putting it. So
how would we first draw energy to us of the things we want to manifest more?
The way we draw energy to us is first to be clear about your belief system of what you deserve to receive and what you're meant to receive.
How do you get clear on what you deserve and are meant to receive?
Whatever your desires are, it means you are meant to receive them at some point. Don't question that. So if you actually had to write down all your desires, these desires, the Creator gave you these desires, so you go out and manifest them. So
what's the difference between a desire and a temptation? Because you could be like, I don't know, just like crazy drugs, and I don't know, just like stuff that's not a spiritual energy. But what if it's the desire? I feel like it's a desire. I'm supposed to go drink all night and gamble all night and just whatever.
Correct. So this is what I tell people. I say, all of these things that are given to us, drinking, gambling, drugs, sex, these are all, for example, let's say if you go to Costco has samples. And you eat a sample, and you like the sample, but if you like the sample, you need to go buy the full product. Nobody goes to Costco all day long and just eat samples. You don't just sit by the sample station all day long to fill your belly with the samples that they give you.
Well, if you're poor. I've done that when I was broke. Yeah.
That's how I got the point. People who just eat samples all day long. So when a person does a drug, what do they feel like? They feel like God. They feel this euphoria. This is a sample to eventually inspire you to buy the full product. The full product is to realize you can feel that if you unlock the power of your soul.
Without the drug.
Without the drug.
But most people think the drug is the power to unlock more. And so they need to keep
Going back to
doing the plant medicine or the drugs that create the awakening, the awareness to then feel, heal, see, do things differently, as opposed to creating from within, right?
because no one's told them that they have the power inside of them that is nuclear. You have this power inside of you that is millions of times greater than any drug you're taking. But we've been told that we need to keep taking the drug to feel that way.
But anyone that I've talked to who's done the plant medicines, they're like, no, nothing is greater than this. This unlocks more than anything I could ever do on my own.
And it's true. It has unlocked more than they've ever experienced. So I don't ever tell people, don't do this plant, don't do this drug. When people tell me, I love sex, I'm having sex with everybody, is there a problem with that? I said, that's fine. You can have sex with everybody you want. You can have all the drugs you want. But I do want you to know that you have something greater inside of you that will give you even more pleasure and more euphoria. If you're open to it, we can talk.
And also, if you're doing the drugs or the alcohol or the sex or the addiction, things that create this energy feeling, what does that do to your vessel?
See, that's the thing. You actually begin to shrink the vessel. How do we know? Because every time you take the drug, it's never as potent the next time.
You need more.
You need
more frequently.
You need it more frequently. So you actually begin to shrink your capacity until you experience death. And then there's some kind of death or painful scenario that breaks your vessel open again, and then you start that process over. The only way to really expand your vessel spiritually is a concept, there's a spiritual law that is certainty beyond logic. You have to be put in a dark situation, a difficult situation, where you do not see any logical way of getting out of it, and then choose to have certainty that you can. Even if you have to fake that certainty. But you have certainty beyond your logical mind. This breaks open the vessel and allows the next level of your soul to come in to hold this energy.
Yeah, and what you've said this about certainty. Certainty is the way to guarantee a positive outcome. As long as you have complete certainty beyond logic that everything is good and will be good, you are guaranteed to have the outcome be good.
Absolutely.
What is the number one thought and number one emotion that blocks us from the ability to manifest greater?
Fear.
What type of fear?
Well, it's insecurity, it's shame, and this results in you limiting your beliefs. And so in some ways, what we're talking about here actually is a decision between fear and love, right? And when you're fearful, this stimulates your sympathetic nervous system with all the negative aspects of it. When you love, you're open, you're generous, you're thoughtful, you're kind, because you've engaged the parasympathetic nervous system. And you have a choice. This is like if you look at Stoic philosophers, like somebody like Epictetus, who was a slave. He says, I cannot control my external environment. What I can control is how I react to my environment, right? So you meet people, I'm sure, say, my life's miserable, my life's horrible. While you meet other people go, well, it's tough right now, but I'm, optimistic it's going to get better. Or I know if I do this, it's going to get better. These are completely oppositional attitudes that have a profound effect depending on what you're believing.
Yes. But how does someone shift their attitude into positive when they're in a suffering state and they feel like they're a victim to so many different things happening to them?
Sure. Well, I can't sit here and say, you do this and your life's going to be perfect. There's some situations, either because of, as an example, structural racism that's built into the system, or chronic poverty, because throughout the world and even in America, the ability to overcome poverty, for most, it's highly unlikely that's going to happen. So yes, you do have power, but it's not necessarily, I'm going to change it and everything's going to be perfect for me. And I'm sure things are not perfect for you, right?
Yeah.
And no matter how much you try or want, well, externally things may look fantastic. It's not perfect.
Sure.
And it's not the way you necessarily want. And I have to say the same thing. But there are people who, no matter how hard they're going to work, it's going to be very challenging. That being said, what we do know is there's certain practices and rules, and if you are going to get out of something, or if you are
Yes.
going to change things, then the best way to do that, which has the highest likelihood of success, is to go through some of the things that we're talking about here. And one of those is that, as an example, there is a tendency for us to want to achieve, right? And if you're an athlete, you have a goal you set there. Well, goals are fine, but if you focus only on the goal and have no concern about any of the other things that are going on,
The process. Yeah.
then you reach the goal and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Yet what we do know, the greatest cause of suffering is what? It's attachment and craving.
Desires.
Yeah. And the thing is, when that
Interesting.
is your absolute focus, and we can't all get these things, you're going to be highly disappointed, and you've ignored all the people in your life as you focus solely on that. And unfortunately, many people learn that lesson far along after they've destroyed their families. They've been through multiple marriages. Their kids don't like them, right?
Because they've been chasing a result or a goal or a dream, but neglecting everything else.
Yeah, because again, as I was saying even about myself, I thought, well, if I just do this, my shame and insecurity will go away. I'll be loved by everybody and my life will be perfect. Yet at every one of those peaks, all I had was disappointment. And while everyone told me life was great, I did not feel that inside because I had not understood that I was the only one who had the key to the self-created prison. And until you realize that, you're on a very difficult path.
So if we're coming from a place of insecurity, fear, or lack, and we're saying, you know what? I want to manifest. I want to create more for myself. I want to have more money. I want to have more opportunities, accomplishments, success. And that's what I want. I desire these things. And I start to apply some of the practices of manifesting and creating more abundance in my life. But if I create those external results and I haven't shifted the insecurities or the shame, what happens next?
Well, you end up the way I did, which is you have everything and you're incredibly unhappy.
Yeah. So you can still manifest and attract what you want and create what you want and accomplish goals, but it's not going to make you feel different about yourself. It might actually make you feel worse.
Exactly. And this is why I was telling you about the story about the woman, because I was 12 and she taught me a visualization technique or manifestation technique, which is actually the origin of where this book came from.
Wow.
So at 12, she said, I want you to write down 10 things that you want. Well, again, unfortunately, in Western capitalist society, and a 12-year-old, you sit there and think of what people want in that
I want
environment.
money, I want cars, I want girls, I want...
Yes. Well, yeah, I wanted a Rolex watch.
Yeah.
Because a friend of mine's father had one, and it looked so amazing to me, right? I wanted a silver Porsche Target. I wanted a mansion overlooking the ocean, et cetera, et cetera.
At 12.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wanted $1 million, which nowadays would probably be about 100 million. But anyway, and I got absolutely every one of those things. And I was more miserable than I had ever been.
Really?
And the interesting thing about that is that, and this is in some ways the point of this book, because again, the average person thinks they know what they want. They don't understand what they need. And that's the critical aspect here.
What's the difference between knowing what we want and having what we need?
So as you know, there's what we call hedonic happiness. So the list I just gave you relates to pleasure and hedonic happiness. I want, it will make me feel good about myself. I. That is the worst thing you can do if you want to manifest the best.
Really?
Yes.
When you make it about self.
Yes, because in some ways you're talking about insecurity. The driver of that is insecurity, fear, right?
And not enough.
And not enough. And especially poor people look through the lens of not enough. And so when you're acting by a belief based on fear, that has a negative effect on these cognitive brain networks. Now, it doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means that you're limiting yourself. And so we talk about this idea of hedonic or selfish happiness, and this is transitory, it's shallow, it doesn't last long, right? eudaimonic happiness is a sense of purpose, and that actually is in terms of benefiting others. It's not about yourself. And the key to that, though, is that when you look through the lens, and we're talking about looking through the lens of compassion, what happens is that you then change how you see the world and what you need, not what you want.
Interesting.
Right. You see, and that changes everything, because you realize when you're of service, when you're caring for others, you don't necessarily need having that big house or the Porsche isn't going to make you whole.
Right.
And so you probably don't chase that anymore, because it's a chimera that you're focused on because you think it's going to help get rid of the shame and the emptiness.
Right.
You see, so it's a different mindset. So when you shift to the parasympathetic nervous system, that activates all of your brain networks and allows them to sync together, if you will, and then has the highest likelihood of manifesting.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we come from a place of lack and wanting more for personal gain by itself, it's not going to bring us the ultimate level of happiness, versus when we come from a place of wanting to create more to serve or impact others in some way that is connected to a purpose, a greater purpose, we will have more fulfillment and hopefully manifest exactly what we need.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that summarizes it. That is the fundamental key here. All of us are manifesting every day, right? Most of us do it very inefficiently.
Right.
You know, because everybody sits and says, I want X, Y, or Z, or I wish for this to happen. I think there are techniques you can use that can maximize the potential for you manifesting your intentions. So learning how the brain works and how those techniques work maximize that. So you go, it's like an athlete, as you well know, if you've never been taught something, you try it for the first time, you sort of stumble through it.
Yeah.
Frankly, most people stumble through life, right? And then as you practice it, or you learn from people who, have the knowledge, then you perfect it. And then you understand if you want to say, the neuroscience underpinnings of it, and how you make these, what we call cognitive brain networks, interact. And then you've taken it from sort of, well, it might happen, I thought about it, to there's a high likelihood it will happen.
How people talk about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. What is at play when we start to think about things we want to manifest and actually actualizing them in the physical material world? Is it the conscious mind or the subconscious mind that is driving this manifestation process?
Well, that's an excellent question. So the key is, how do you get information which sticks into your subconscious? So just saying, I want this, it may or may not work. Because again, we're also distracted by all sorts of stuff. As an example, we have about 10 million bits of information coming in through our sensory organs every second.
10 million?
Million, yes.
Wow.
And we're only able to process on a conscious level 50 to 100. Okay, so now most of that goes to maintaining homeostasis or functioning of our body systems on an unconscious level. But we have actually access to our subconscious level, and you can learn that through different techniques and then utilize those to maximize the input. And so when I say you have 50 to 100 bits, you can use part of that to consciously embed your intention if you know how to do that.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. And as a brain surgeon and a neuroscientist yourself, what did you learn through working on physical brains, the matter, as well as neuroscience, in terms of, I guess, creating this for your life, a more harmonious, abundant life, studying both the brain and the mind?
Well, in some ways, I mean, being a neurosurgeon's a physical task, and it's not as if there are little signs on the brain that tell you where everything is. Mm-hmm. Now, certainly we know from anatomy generally where things are, But you have to remember, I mean, there's a subset of people who, we talk about our speech center being on the left side, but there's a subset of people that's on the right side.
Really?
Yes.
How do you know that?
You don't, unless there's something that interferes with it,
Oh,
or you specifically test for it. So in general, the anatomy is pretty consistent. But, it's like looking at somebody, you're tall, there's a short person, and that's the way the brain works. Not everyone is wired the same way or has everything in the exact spot. And in fact, as an example, let's say you play the violin, the homunculus, which is both the sensory and motor area that has different representations of body parts. If you're a violinist, the area associated with your hand or hands get dramatically increased in size compared to other parts of your brain.
interesting.
And in fact, the same is true with certain types of meditation practices, right? So you can have a profound effect on your brain, physical brain, and certainly you have power over your mind. And in some ways, that's what we're talking about is, and this goes back, you mentioned the law of attraction, all is in the mind. And I think, in fact, some of the things you talk about, you understand that when you are disciplined and can get access, you can make things happen.
Yes.
And whether it's a physical challenge or a mental challenge, but you have to understand how to get access.
So how do we get access?
I'm not going to tell you until you buy the book.
Exactly. Well, one of the things you talk about in the book is this phenomenon of vibration. And, it's interesting because there's brain waves, but there's also heart energy or vibration as well. And I think you mentioned about how the heart vibration is actually, 10 or 50 times more powerful than the brain waves, I think, correct?
Yeah, actually, you can measure the vibrational energy from the heart at 5 or 6 feet away. And, this is where it gets confusing between the woo-woo and the reality, because a lot of people will wrap all sorts of other baggage onto that. But it's true. And the interesting thing about that, though, is, and I'm sure you appreciated it, you can meet people who have an energy about them and a presence about them, and it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And typically these are people who are non-judgmental, accepting, open, and respect who you are as a person. They don't look down at you. And you want to be around those people. And those people emit this very positive energy.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And so it's interesting also because, as an example, if you have a group of women who live together, over a period of months, their menstrual cycles will match.
Really?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, it's the nature of this vibrational energy, and I talk about it in the book. And in fact, if you took a metronome, like had 5 or 6 metronomes lined up and watched them and they're on the same table vibrating, they will all get in sync over a period of time. And so this idea of vibration has actually an influence on things.
On other things.
Yeah.
So if I'm acting chaotic and I'm constantly in the state of chaos, if I'm around someone else, I may influence them to create that type of vibration as well. Or vice versa, they might influence me if they're calmer for me to get calm.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact,
which one wins?
That's a good question. I mean, it depends on how powerful that energy is. And that energy can be very powerful, negative or positive.
Wow.
And of course, I think you would agree, most people try to avoid being around negative people.
Of course.
There's a saying that, what do they call them? Energy eaters, I think.
Yes.
You're around them. It's like, in fact, I got called by a woman the other day, and I just dread getting a call from her ever, because it always turns into a drama about her. And you sit there and it's just over and over again. And it's sad because, and we can talk about this more, all of us carry baggage from our childhoods, right?
Yes.
And until you are aware that the baggage you carry has an influence on every decision you make, every relationship you have, you can't change. As an example, I'm sure you've seen situations where individuals repeatedly pick an abusive partner.
Yes.
Over and over again. And I don't understand why this happens to me. because you have created that energy that allows that to happen. And I'm not blaming, I'm just saying that this is truth. So if you never understood, as an example, that while when I was a kid I had an abusive father, and he would be mean to me or hurt me, the problem is, that becomes familiar to you, and even though it's painful and hurts you, it is something that's associated with a love figure.
Interesting.
And it's really very sad, actually.
I mean, a lot of our programming and conditioning sounds like it is wired in us at a very young age. And we have been conditioned by 7, 8, 9, 10 to have a set of beliefs, way of thinking, and a way of feeling around our environment and relationships. And then we live with it for 10, 20, 30 years until we start to become aware of it, hopefully sooner, but we kind of repeat these patterns until there's a breakdown or there's a sadness or a breakup or something that gets us to wake up. How hard is it to change our belief systems that have been wired in us for decades?
Well, it's very hard. I mean, you see it every day. You see people who become addicted to alcohol and drugs. Mm-hmm. And, it's not because they want to live that life. It's because they're in such pain from the baggage they carry and they have no way out.
That's the coping mechanism.
Yes.
The relief.
Yes. And so it's very sad. And as you pointed out, until there is a profound, painful event that gets their attention, many of them won't change.
Hey, did you get something out of this video? If you did, leave a comment below on your biggest takeaway. We had 4 massive experts share their secrets to manifestation, and I want you to succeed. I want you to succeed now, all of 2025, and beyond. Go ahead and leave a comment of your biggest takeaway and the action step that you're going to start applying in your life so you can manifest more of the dreams that you have that are in your heart. I want you to manifest more, but it doesn't happen just by thinking alone. You've got to take consistent action. You've got to let go of a limiting belief that's been holding you back, that's been blocking your abundance, and you need to be consistent. This is your moment and this is your year to thrive. And if you enjoyed this, please do me a favor and like this video. We've got over 2 million subscribers on the channel now. We're looking to really grow this to bring more people into this community. So click the subscribe button right now, leave a comment, your biggest takeaway, and share this video with one friend that you want to succeed and see succeed and thrive in 2025 and beyond. Also, if you're looking for more financial freedom and you want to create financial abundance, make sure to check out my new book, Make Money Easy, Create Financial Freedom, and Live a Richer Life. Not just talking about the external riches, but the internal abundance as well. Just go to makemoneyeasybook.com, get a copy there. The link is below in the description as well. And when you get a copy, you'll also be entered into our Money Mindset Masterclass. That'll be a training for you when you get this copy. So check it out. Thank you for watching and subscribing, for liking, leaving a comment, and I can't wait to share what's next in the next episode.
I try to find people who have already achieved what I'm trying to achieve and spend time with them, add value to them, and serve them. Because Kabbalah explains there's a universal law. If you add value to someone or serve them in a way that makes their life